It was a key recommendation of the Flood Inquiry's interim report and brought reassurance to many residents in the Lockyer Valley. The state government has been clearing debris in creeks throughout the valley since January's deadly floods. But conservationists warn these flood mitigation works are environmentally reckless and could make future floods even more powerful and dangerous. Kieran McKechnie reports.
It was once a lush, bubbling creek. Now it looks like a barren moonscape. Tent Hill Creek runs through Mark and Diane Brune's Lockyer Valley property. They say over the past few months they've watched bulldozers come and tear through the idyllic stream.
Based on what we've seen, that's pretty frightening. It looks potentially dangerous, you know, from a point of view of what it's going to do to future water flows.
The people of the Lockyer Valley know how dangerous water flows can be. The horrifying force of the so-called inland tsunami cut a swathe through the valley, taking trees, cars, houses and lives. 19 people were washed to their deaths. The Commission of Inquiry investigating Queensland's unprecedented floods crisis last month recommended the clearing of debris in waterways throughout the Lockyer Valley. The state government was already acting on a vigorous clearing and rebuilding program. But Mark Brune argues the flood mitigation practice is doing more harm than good.
All the advice that I've had would suggest that the kind of work that they've done will make the water run faster, and that the faster moving water will actually turn objects into projectiles.
Mark Brune is a lone voice in the valley. Most here see the clearing work as crucial to their survival. While he concedes debris clogging creeks could make waters bank up and flood more widely, he insists in the Lockyer Valley at least that's preferable to the alternative.
It's one thing to get immersed in water, it's quite another to get hit by a wall of water. And they're the sorts of floods we get out in these areas. The water runs off the hills. It arrives very quickly.
Mark and Diane Brune have lobbied the state government to reverse its position, but they say they're getting nowhere.
The standard reply we get is that what they're doing is okay and within the guidelines, and you know, don't worry. But we do worry.
There are two ways of looking at this. My way of looking at it is that we are protecting people. That was emergency temporary works.
Randall Hart is the South East Regional Director at DERM, Queensland's Department of Environment and Resource Management. He says most of the damage to valley waterways was caused by the huge flood, not the bulldozers.
This was a big natural event, something that happens and has been happening for millions of years and will continue to happen. Yes, a natural flood. Yes, there was some man-made works to try and fix up some of the problems, to allow people to protect their properties, to protect themselves, and then we'll come back now and construct more permanent works to ensure that the problems that some of the green groups are worried about will be very minimised.
Simon, tell me, in this part here, what are your concerns?
Well, the big thing is they've removed the the vegetation along the creek, which is only going to exacerbate the problem. You know, water flow is going to be faster, they're going to be more dangerous, and then there's the environmental consequences, which are quite significant. Obviously, you destroyed all the habitat, both for aquatic and terrestrial-based species, so it's a disaster all round.
The Queensland Conservation Council questions DERM's management of the creek. So this has sort of got more of a drain effect now, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that's all it is. It's going to accelerate the flow, so the people downstream are going to experience a faster flow and a more dangerous flow.
The council's Simon Boltes believes the bulldozing work was a knee-jerk reaction, and Derm has only made things worse.
It's probably a bit of panic. You know, there was a need to do something, so they've gone in there and done something, but they've probably picked the worst option they've done. They've caused more harm and more damage, and in the circumstances, and the next flood are probably even going to be worse.
In fact, he blames the extent of January's flood on a culture of tree clearing here over decades.
Removing the vegetation that's been happening over here for a number of years has probably increased the water flow twofold. I think if you had reduced the water flow by 50%, you would have given more time for people to save their property, and maybe in some instances some people would have had a chance to save their lives.
A change in long-held attitudes, he says, is now needed.
There is a level of ignorance in some of these areas, but we can only hope that they'll listen and learn. They'll listen to the scientists, which is most important, and that the politicians do the same.
While the bulldozing work has already been completed ahead of the summer storm season, the Queensland Conservation Council will now vigorously lobby the Queensland Floods Commission to ensure it changes its recommendations so that this sort of clearing work never happens again. They'll certainly have the backing of the region's traditional owners, the Jagera people. They fear the bulldozers have damaged a string of significant cultural sites, although they won't know for certain until they're able to access and survey about 50 areas in the valley. They insist they were not consulted during any stage by Derm.
I haven't heard of any issues from the Indigenous traditional owners, so I can't comment any further than that. I'm not aware of any problems, but I have to be honest, I don't believe that my department went out and consulted with them.
After making that statement, Randall Hart reconsidered and sought advice from his department. Later, he said this.
Not sure about the other agencies, whether they consulted the Indigenous owners. We're very happy to talk to the Indigenous owners if there is any issues.
The Jagera people will certainly be taking the department up on that offer. The Queensland Conservation Council and concerned landholders too will continue fighting to be heard in their push to protect local creeks and ultimately the Lockyer Valley community.
I can't emphasise enough, if you do look after the landscape, it looks after you. If you do the wrong thing by it, then you can only expect the worst.